JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. May 2nd, 2024, about 2:35 in the afternoon on this Thursday. Apple earnings day. Tomorrow we have the April jobs report, and markets have found some footing here. So, talk really quick about the markets, IIPR, CDLX. I added some BIDU calls. Haven't been in BIDU in quite some time. Trupanion after the close and go from there. But first, take a look at the markets. The SPY all the way down to 500, broke under 500 for a minute after the morning gap, and then it just seems like a slow, meticulous melt to the upside. Every dip has been bought, and we're right up above that 504.50 handle. A good sign heading into tomorrow in the April jobs report. I don't think Apple earnings after the close can disappoint. It seems like most of the negative sentiment, or at least everything that could be negative around Apple, is kind of baked in my opinion. So I think even if it's inline numbers, I'm not going to go and get calls, but I don't think it's going to rattle markets much. Even if there's like a slight miss, it might do similar to what Tesla did, where people are wondering why it's rallying despite a miss. So hopefully, SPY close over 504.50. The VIX, which again has been that great indicator, is down 4%. Even when we were pulling back in the morning, the VIX kind of held up, spiked for a second over 16, but then came back. So good sign here. And then the amount of stocks over the 50-day moving, it's trending back up in the right direction. So I'm gonna get into some of the names. So IIPR actually it's hitting highs right now, 108.65. It hit 52-week highs yesterday, but now this is a 52-week high. You start pulling back the chart, and I think I keep saying I think it's going over 120. This is I wouldn't call any stock less, not a lot of risk, but in regards to what just happened with the DA possibly reclassifying cannabis, I think of all the plays, this is the less risky, the lower risk, highest, I wouldn't say highest reward, but I think it's going to perform very well. It's still under the radar. I don't think people understand what it does. Um, I think it heads to 120. So lock some more of my May strikes in. If it gets over 110, I might just close the rest of my May strikes in, and then just ride the June strikes. And yeah, I think it's gonna be, especially now that it broke 52-week highs. Where are the sellers? The sellers they've been churned through, right? So the only people who can be selling now are people who've probably been holding for a while for possibly bigger moves. So I think people will be holding, and it's a high divvy stock, right? And it's probably over eight bucks this year. So a lot of people, it's a buy and hold, get the dividends, automatically reinvest in the stock. I think it keeps going higher. So that's IIPR. Of course, I wish CGC and ACB were rallying. They actually CGC went up to 13 this morning, all the way back under 11, and now it's trading right at the 11 handle. I think pretty much how it was before the news this week. I think it's going to be a bumpy ride. But again, 17, 18 bucks in the coming weeks and months on CGC, 12 to 13 on ACB. There's a longer view on IIPR, and you can see back in the middle of 20. Let's see if I put the chart in the chat room. I think I did. But back in the middle of, at the start of 2022, IIPR was a $225 stock. And that's before all these potential catalysts, and that's before the company started adding more tenants. So it's not one of those names that have EPS issues or revenue issues. It's a REIT, so their job is to get tenants, paying tenants. Those people eventually, IIPR pays down their debt. Good stuff. And all right, rants for other days, but love IIPR here. BIDU. Haven't been in BIDU for quite some time. You look at the chart, it's been churning right. Every time it seems to hit 110 or so, it turns around and reverses. So I don't know. I thought the last couple weeks ago, you have Citron Research out, pumping the stock for the last month or so, but it looked like it was a breakout, then falls all the way down into the under 100. And then finally, now you start to get a move here to the upside. And Asia stocks have been rallying. I think they're multi-month, 3-month highs. They are on holiday for the next couple of days. So I think that's just a good setup for BIDU to continue to run. I've always said, BIDU is kind of that name that probably doesn't get enough credit as an AI player in China. And you look at what it's doing. It's pretty much just moving with the China markets. And Baba, which another name, I think it traded 3 times, had a PE ratio of 3 a week ago, and that's starting to rally. So really strong today. Sometimes Baidu has these rallies and then closes, gives back the gains. It's not doing that today. It's up near 12. I was actually looking at the weekly strikes, and the 115 weeklies were 17 cents. I'm like, let me give myself another week. I went and get those 120s for next week, and then sure enough, the 115s are already up 400%. So with that risk comes the reward. I'd rather have the time. So at some point, my calls almost came close to a double. Once they get up near a double, I'll close some to cover costs. I'll ride the rest because you never know with BIDU. It's one of those names that could just gap down 4% tomorrow. On the flip side, it could gap again. A nice little gap this morning. Um, could be 120 by tomorrow, but that's wishful thinking or hopeful thinking. I think it heads higher. So that's BIDU. Dell, I put another trend line in here because I kind of want to be in a situation where I add some June strikes, but I don't want to be uh, going after it again only to see it fade. So it traded down with the market all the way down under 119 again, and then seems to have found a bounce. So I'm probably still going to wait till it gets over 130 to try and play into earnings, but really love Dell in the coming weeks and months, almost as a catch-up play to SMCI and some of these other names that have rallied substantially more than Dell. Because similar to SMCI, Dell has a multi-billion-dollar backlog, and they are on the forefront of this transition. And I've already talked about the NVIDIA CEO pretty much shouting out. Well, pretty much he did shout out Dell at their GTC conference, GT whatever it was, GT. Yeah, I think it was GTC conference. I think that's it. Roku finally maybe starting to find a bid here. It's almost at 60 bucks. So got downgraded this morning by Jeffries or initiated with an underperformed 50 bucks. It's like, where were they when it was over 100 bucks? I love these analysts that come in at the end of these moves. So hopefully, this is it for Roku. Could find a bottom. Trupanion. What else to say about Trupanion? Earnings after the close. Thought it was this morning. Trading right here, 24 bucks. Any decent quarter, I think it trades 26, 27 bucks. 45% short interest, or maybe it's down to 40%. Won't take much for that one to go. And then last but not least is Cardlytics. So this morning, yesterday, you heard me talk about Carvana the last couple of days. I had a lot of people asking questions. There were insider sells. It's a highly shorted name. People were looking possibly for downside. It's a name that traded all the way down to $3 back at the end of 2022. Rallied really big its last earnings, and then this earnings, similar story, just exceeding expectations. Instead of it going bankrupt, which was probably on the table 18, 24 months ago, now it's a possibility of being profitable. So that wasn't really baked into the stock, and you see it just taking off. So the thing with that is Clifford Sozin has been holding Carvana for 5 or 6 long time. You go on YouTube, you can see some of his videos he's talked about, and he's a very focused fund. He has 5 holdings right now, and 2 of those 5, Carvana is one, and Cardlytics is the other. CDLX, he owns a 14.4 stake in CDLX. It seems every time Carvana goes up, the next couple days he goes out and adds more to his Cardlytics position, whether he uses leverage or what have you. So here's Cardlytics up nearly 9% today. They report earnings next week, May 8th, after the close. Really like this one to test 15, if not tomorrow, sometime next week. Lock some of my calls in to cover costs, ride the rest into earnings. And again, I've said this about Cardlytics. I'm really bullish the name. I think it goes back over 20 bucks. It's a name that could be 25, 30, 35, 40. Back when it was one of my top 5 stocks, and this is before all the dilution and all the COVID issues, because Cardlytics business wrapped around people shopping at brick and mortar, doing travel, things like that. And when that wasn't happening, names like Cardlytics, you can't generate revenue when people aren't going to stores, right? Or restaurants are closed, and your big part of your value proposition is that you sell offers to restaurants, and restaurants pay back to the card providers to get their ad space on their credit card, the credit card login profiles, things like that. So obviously it's very hard for Cardlytics to make money. So some of the reasons you see it down here, there's still the effects of COVID that finally have worked their way through. So that's why I'm always surprised. Like, it's still trading down here 14 bucks. How is this not substantially higher? And the dilution doesn't. So a couple of years ago, before dilution, obviously there's less outstanding shares. Valuation is a little different when you're looking at the stock price. So I'm not saying it's going back over 100 bucks and higher. I just think it's substantially undervalued here. So continue to hear me talk about Cardlytics. I'll probably continue to talk about it until it finally heads, where it should be, into the 30s, 40s, 50s, and higher. So that's Cardlytics. Other names. So after the close today, Apple, you have Coin, you have Block. I don't know why it says AQ. I'm sorry for the typo. DraftKings, Cloudflare, Melicabra, however you pronounce it, the Amazon of South America, Expedia, Booking.com, the Booking Group, however you call it, Priceline.com, Amgen, and then you have Weight Watchers. So I could go on a rant forever about Weight Watchers. I get messages a lot about, am I going to add some more? I still have some higher strikes that are going to need a miracle, not a miracle, but a large move for it to pay. But I think at some point when they have earnings, it's whether this quarter, the next quarter, the quarter after, it's going to be kind of the make or break, where it's either Weight Watchers are going to be able to, it should be WW is going to be able to navigate what's going on with GLP-1 and be the dealer of choice for GLP-1 drugs, support, counseling, all that stuff for health, right? For health, which GLP-1 encompasses a lot of things, diabetes and all that fun stuff. Or the competition is squashing them. People look at Weight Watchers, Weight Health as an old brand. They don't want to do business with them anymore. And they go to these other ones like Noom and direct to consumer, which you have now with LLY. And Pfizer just announced the direct to consumer today as well, which maybe that's the way everything's going, and they drop WW. But we'll find out in the next quarter or two. Don't be surprised if you hear me rant about WW again in the future, and don't be surprised if you don't hear me rant about it anymore. I still, reasons I'm bullish on that name is because of the leadership, the CEO, past experience of taking a brand and bringing it digital and being able to engage people on a platform, and that's what you need with WW. We'll see if she's able to turn this around, and we're going to find out this quarter and the next quarter. If they do, I think it's off to the races. High short interest, they start paying down their debt. It could be one of these stories that you look a couple years from now and it's substantially higher than where it is now. So that's that. Yeah, that's all. I'm trying to think of some of the other names. Dell, Turn. I'm not going to talk too much about Turn's Pharmaceuticals. All the way up to 530 and change at the open, back down to 505, and now here it is at 522. One of these days, I don't know if it's an analyst upgrade or a kick in the butt, and then that's just going to be off to the races. And then hopefully get some M&A. VKTX, you had NVO this morning, disappointing earnings only because of a supply issue, not demand. Which, again, how is that negative VKTX when a company misses because of supply? And here's VKTX, which eventually is going to help with the supply issue, and it sells off in sympathy. It doesn't make sense. It's bouncing. I would have loved to see it back over $80. Maybe have to wait for tomorrow. I think that's it. CGC is back over 11. Yeah. So anyway, that's my rant for today, folks. Let's have a great day. We have about an hour and 15 minutes to close. Trupanion have to close. Apple, lots of earnings, should be fun. Have a great day. Rock and roll.